The world's about to wake up to a $50 trillion opportunity at the very least, but Tesla investors still have a head start. Morgan Stanley just released a report forecasting 1 billion humanoid robots by 2050. Sounds massive, right? It's actually way too conservative. Today we're breaking down what Wall Street's missing, the true market size, rollout speed, training curve, and what these bots will actually be capable of. If you think Optimus is just a side project, think again. This might be Tesla's most valuable product ever. Let's get into it. We got Cern Basher, chartered financial analyst who's currently running his own investment advisory firm called Brilliant Advice, providing wealth management services. And we have Phil Bissell, founding member of the technical team at Rivian, an electric vehicle maker. Before Rivian, he held various engineering management roles at Apple. Welcome, Cern, and welcome, Phil.
Hi, Herbert.
So we're going to talk our favorite topic, which is humanoid bots. Right now, it's kind of being overshadowed by the talk about robotaxi, but this is happening. And not only at Tesla, let's share a little bit of, there's an explosion as we predicted. And here are a variety, and this is not even the complete list, right? But you can see these humanoid robots. There's all sorts of different vendors and different countries. Obviously, it's mostly United States, Western Europe, and so forth, but also China, of course. You got Tesla here and these other competitors. And then we've got Figure at the bottom right here. You got Agility Robotics. Got Boston Dynamics, Uptronic. These are the American ones. And then there's all these other Chinese ones, which is also moving fast as well. Sanctuary from Canada and others. So this is the report that was just dropped by Morgan Stanley. They've been producing these reports. This is a second one, and maybe even the third one, I think. And they've been producing reports, but they've not yet added into their Tesla stock price any kind of valuation code associated with humanoid bots, but it looks like that they're about to, or they will be. Now, this report, they talk about 1 billion robots and $5 trillion revenues by 2050. China is in a pole position. It sounds big, but boy, 2050 is pretty far away. So Cern and then Phil, what do you guys think about this?
Yeah, it's, again, on the surface, it sounds pretty amazing. Right, anything that's in the trillion sounds like a big number, but when you actually run the math behind this, these numbers actually look shockingly small. If you have a billion robots in 2050 and they're creating revenue of 4.7 trillion, that's revenue per bot of $4,615. Now, if they're assuming that these bots are only sold and there are no other ongoing revenues, then if you just track the amount of bots that they project being sold in 2050, it's about 200 million. That's an average price per bot of about $23,000. And I'm guessing that's their assumption, is that the bots will just be sold for a price that's less than a car. So that leads them to, the $4.75 trillion value. But I think the reality is highly likely, in my opinion, that there's going to be a lot of recurring revenue associated with these robots. Now, in 2050, maybe not, but certainly in the early years, a lot of recurring revenue. And then over time, as the bots become more prevalent, maybe that becomes smaller and smaller. But with the numbers that Morgan Stanley have, just reaching 1 billion robots by 2050, I don't think much of that pricing pressure will be felt at that point.
Yeah, I think it's a bit conservative. I mean, as we were discussing a moment ago, it's sort of like if today's the iPhone moment for bots, and that's 25 years in the future, look where iPhone is today. Now, of course, there's a much greater competitive mix of bots on that list, and some will make it, some won't. But there's no way you can do that math and make sense of that. And the other thing is that we are in such an accelerated time from a technology point of view that things are accelerating much quicker. So I'm glad they're leaning in. I'm glad they're paying attention, but the numbers are too small. Yeah.
And I think, Herbert, if you take a look at the chart that shows the revenue expectation over different time periods matched up with the production and the total humanoid stock, as they call it, this projection looks nice. On the left side, total humanoid revenue going from 3 billion to almost 5 trillion. That's a market I think anybody would get excited about, just on the surface of it. So you don't need to be too crazy. That this is already pretty crazy enough to project, a $5 trillion market that comes out of nowhere. Basically, it doesn't exist today, right? So I understand the reason to be conservative here, Now, to Phil's point, Morgan Stanley made some projections a year ago. And it's interesting when we compare the numbers that they've put out here recently with where they were a year ago,
Mhm.
there's an acceleration in those numbers. These numbers are 16 times higher than what they projected a year ago.
Yeah.
All right. So where will this be a year from now? It may
Yeah.
be another
Right.
10 or 15
Yeah.
times higher.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a sign of them being very conservative. So
Mhm.
just for example, in 2040, they had annual production of less than 5 million bots. Now they're at 46 million, and total stock up from 8.4 million to 134 million.
Yeah.
That's in
Mhm.
2040. The 2050 number went from production of 11 million bots per year up to 202 million. And the stock total bots deployed from 63 million to over a billion. So again, a
Whoa.
16x increase in all these numbers.
Wow,
Right.
In
that's interesting. So they are waking up, is what you're saying.
They're slowly waking up.
Slowly waking
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Or they're
Yeah.
doing it on purpose, though. I mean, this is obviously that is such a big magnitude change that it's not just I don't know, it's not just I'm going to tweak my numbers. This is a magnitude change.
Well, I
So,
think such is the nature of this market. When you actually seriously look at this, you realize how big this can be. And so if you're making projections, let's say a year ago, they probably knew it back then too. But in the name of being conservative, they put out some pretty low numbers. You revisit numbers again a year later and you realize how conservative you are, but you're probably still being very conservative because as we just mentioned, these numbers are still, in our opinion, lowball numbers,
You know,
25
so
years out.
what I
Mhm.
see is they always get this wrong in the following way. They predict that there is a market, that it is building, but they never put it on an S curve. And it's sort
Mhm.
of the S curve is the underlying, laws of physics of how market adoption occurs. So if you don't know what that ramp is on the beginning of that curve, but once you start going up that curve, you can't go linear anymore. I mean, it's just impossible. There's no product that follows that trajectory.
Yeah,
So
The
Cern and
thing,
I just interviewed Tony Seba, and that will
Right.
drop tomorrow. This
Yeah.
will be on Saturday. That video will come out tomorrow. He is obviously the most well-known expert in disruption, and he shows these S curves
Right. Right.
every like 1,000 products. Right, we're talking
Yeah. Exactly.
microwaves, toasters, and the car and the horse and all that. So it's always very very slow at the beginning, and then it accelerates to this exponential curve. And like you're saying, it does not look like that they've got an exponential curve. This is you saw that little line, the graph going up that way. Now, there's some people, there's some analysts who have said that they think that the total market for humanoid robots is 1 million bots. And they go, the reason
Right.
is because that is the existing market today for these specialized robots.
Yeah, that's great.
This was again, I think a slide coming directly from Morgan Stanley in their last report. And they said there's specialized robots and there's humanoid robots. And they kind of compared the two. The specialized robots are these, but it's like, how could you just say the maximum market for human robots is 1 million? Because that is what we have today.
Well, I mean, it's silly because once you put a bot in human form, you essentially should be comparing it to the human labor population, not specialized bots, right? So how many people are in the labor force in,
Exactly.
in let's say, you know, the type of labor that's in service or manufacturing? If you just walked it from there, you realize that that's a replacement product for that.
just a couple of thoughts on that, Herbert, your comment about, a million. The founder of Mercedes-Benz in
Mm.
1890, there's a quote attributed to him.
Yeah.
And he said, the market for automobiles is not more than 1 million
Yeah.
because that's how many chauffeurs there will be. Right? We're
There you
limited
go.
by the number of chauffeurs that can drive these vehicles. That was his viewpoint back then because you were chauffeured around, you had a driver.
Yeah.
So I think we're making the same kind of mistake today.
You weren't
And
comparing
and
them to
Morgan,
horses.
right, exactly, or even human workers, right? Because we look at the labor market today made up as people.
Mhm.
And in the Morgan Stanley report, they're looking at humanoid substitution. and the wage impact of that. They're looking at replacement of workers. But what this is an entirely new platform, a new form of labor. And like we had with horses to cars, the new system is far bigger than what the old one it replaces. And again, Tony Seba's work tells us that. Right, we always create a new system that's far bigger than the old one. It's not just a one-for-one replacement of a car for a horse. We ended up with far more cars. And I think the same thing is going to be true with humanoid robots. We're going to create almost over time, basically an unlimited labor force. That's the mistake that everybody's making.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. You just look at other products. I mean, just look at iPhone, right? It didn't just replace a bunch of flip phones. It isn't just a phone, although it's named iPhone. It also became this, mobile compute device, and every single person has one of them or the comparable Android device. And that's certainly different than the flip phone market that preceded it. So yeah, it's an enabler, right? Once you do that, you break into new opportunities, huge markets. So
Yeah, I think there's a whole list of companies that wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for the App Store, like things like Uber and Airbnb, and you can keep going on and on and on. Okay, so here's the thing, right? So people are saying that, okay, so many of us agree that the market for human and robots is massive, and we get that. And there's, analysts like this that are very conservative. Okay. But then there's the other side, which is too many of us seem to be jumping the gun and thinking that it's going to be a massive market this year and next year. There's a few that came out and said, there's problems. Okay, just don't be too excited about what you're going to see this year or next year, because one is the ability to create the hardware is a lot harder than you realize, and more importantly, let's say if you make the elbow, it needs to be able to carry 50 pounds, and it needs to be able to make that maneuver with weights and so forth, not just for 6 months. It needs to do it for years, and to create that specialized hardware that can last for years is a lot harder than people realize. That's one argument. And the other argument they're trying to remind people is that, just like you guys said, it's not just a one-to-one replacement of a human. A company to actually install or to implement or to welcome, I guess, a humanoid bot. Welcome, come on into my company. Right. You need to train them. You need to, are the companies ready to actually take these bots and put them in? Because it's a whole new process, right? You guys can share with me all these things. Both of those will take a long time and won't happen right away. And once you get past that, so maybe your estimates for the first 3 years are a lot higher than you should be, because it should be lower. But then once that's solved, it just escalates. So you guys want to make a comment on that first?
One comment I would make is that, there's also a subtle thing here about acceptance, and what has to happen is, what I think, like, say, a Tesla has to do is has to produce the best physical product in terms of the things that you're mentioning, Herbert, in terms of the actuators working, having the durability, and the product just being the right form factor. But then once it gets into that special place, the workforce, the people accepting that in have to find it to be something that they're bringing in that's exciting, new, adds value to their existing jobs, doesn't threaten their jobs. So I'm talking about the people that are purchasing or leasing these bots into businesses. I mean, you can't go full guns blazing and say, "Hey, guess what? We put these bots in, and it removes your job too." Right? There has to be this acceptance, and so I think that's a subtle part. And I think you saw that. You see that with all these products. I mean, I always do a direct compare to iPhone, because I think about the same thing, is that what iPhone was trying to do is essentially destroy the carrier, but you couldn't destroy the carrier without going through the carrier. And how did you do that? Well, Steve did a deal with the devil. They did a deal with AT&T, but he kind of convinced, he said, well, there's just going to be this pull for this product that's going to come from the consumer that's going to be overwhelming. And there's no way to fight that flood. You have to, it's like gravity. You're going to be pulled by that. So you, AT&T, should do this deal. And of course, AT&T came back and said, okay, we want this 5-year exclusive for this, for the privilege of destroying our network. I mean, ultimately, what did Steve want to do? He wanted to remove the carrier. The carrier was really the controlling entity at the time. And I think that's the same thing with these bots, and is that they have to kind of skinny through to get into businesses, to be accepted by businesses, and then they can go and do their disruptive thing after the fact, and they will. I mean, they'll be hugely disruptive at some point, but there has to be a great acceptance to bring them in. I don't think it's just the simple idea that Home Depot has to have them because Walmart has them. I think it's the people at Home Depot that make the decision to bring them in have to feel comfortable that this is, it's exciting new enhancing part of their career, and they bring it in, and then it's not really directly threatening them. It's additive, not subtractive. I think it's important.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Phil. And I think the good news on that front is that employers today already suffer from high turnover,
Mm-hmm.
worker shortages, and things like that. And I think a lot of them will welcome, the employers will welcome them, but also the employees who perhaps will see a lot of tasks that they don't like to really do, like just moving stuff around,
Right.
being taken over by robots. I think that a lot of employees would welcome that. And so maybe that's kind of the way in, right? It makes the employees' jobs that much easier. And by the way, when they go home at night and then come back in the morning, the plant has been cleaned and it's looking pristine, and no one has to come in and clean up or clean up before they leave. Like, is just all these benefits, I think, for human labor that they will enjoy for a while, again, until the robots take their jobs.
Yeah, they have to start at the bottom of the barrel, the types of jobs that they don't really want to do at all,
Hmm.
and let it build from there. And I think then, then it's overwhelming. Then it is gravity.
So how close do you guys think that these bot makers are to making a viable hardware, the hardware for the robots? Do you guys believe when Elon says that we're going to have 5,000 bots this year, or run rate of 10 to 12,000 by the end of this year? We're going to have 50,000 bots next year. Some people are saying, well, for Tesla, sure, they might actually just do that, even with hardware, or sorry, robot, version Optimus version 2. Doesn't matter for them because they can just eat the cost, and they'll learn something from producing these at those numbers. But others, they need to wait until they've got the hardware really nailed down. Do you think that? Do you believe, Elon?
From my perspective, it's a bit like human labor. There's a spectrum, right? It doesn't take too much to train a human to move stuff around, but it takes a lot of time and money and effort to train a human to do surgery. And I think there's a distinction with humanoid bots too. We see bots today, like agilities robots, moving stuff around all day long. There's various cams that they put up at conferences in different places. You can watch the robots working nonstop. So they're already viable in that way. And it's just a question then of the ramp in their capabilities over time. And I think that's kind of the open question, is how quickly will things ramp? The indication to me is that things are ramping faster in that space than we thought maybe they would a year ago, right? Some of the comments out of Figure and Tesla and some of the other robotics makers have indicated that they're making some breakthroughs in training. And I would
Yeah.
expect that to continue.
I think hardware is very hard here, but I think software might be harder. So, I think what space level here? You have to create a durable bot that has incredible movement, flexibility. In other words, ability to do these tasks that if trained. But I think there's a lot left on the software side from perspective of building these skill sets that would be used in any degree of labor force, from moving boxes to surgeon. And I think that's the thing that we're furthest away from, that people are not recognizing. And that, I think, is the thing that Tesla's probably closest to nailing, that people aren't recognizing. So that's kind of an interesting point there. I think that's why Tesla has an interesting advantage, because I think it's the software stack is more advanced. I mean, what I'm saying is the hardware has to be amazing. It has to be, but if you look at keep going back to iPhone, the hardware of iPhone, was evolved as to be pretty amazing piece of black glass, and, great form factor, durable, etc. But it was the software ecosystem that made that, and that didn't start on day one. It was mature to a certain level, but it matured greatly after that. I mean, the App Store wasn't added for a long time, for example. So I think that's the thing about these bots, is that a lot of them are showing these funny little magic tricks, and they're great. but I think, and they've showed a lot of physical skill, but we haven't seen, to your point, Herbert, how durable the bot is. And some of them, I don't feel that their form factor is clean enough. I think the Tesla one has a very clean form factor. But beyond that, it's going to be about the software.
No, let's break it down. So how many of these bots do you believe that they can produce 5,000 bots this year because they feel that the hardware is good enough that I'm going to make 5,000 bots that's going to be able to do some sort of useful work, just pick and place, let's say. Do you think all of them? Do you think just maybe 2 of them? Maybe 0?
The thing about this is a little different than maybe other products is that I think Tesla will make a few. You can define whatever you want in a few. I think they can make hundreds, but they're really, kind of a hardware. They're sort of production validation testing units. They're like PVT units, right? They're going to evolve them as they see what kind of stress they take in their internal tasking, right? They're going to put them to work at Tesla first. And so they have a really nice advantage here because by putting them to work, they see where they fail and then they can improve them. So the answer might be the opposite, is that they will constrain the build of them for the purpose of getting it right, before they scale. So that's sort of what I'm thinking they're going to do.
But Phil, Elon came out and said we're going to make 5,000 this year, right?
Well,
He
that's
said,
still constrained. I mean, in some regard.
So you're saying, what I said earlier, right? For Tesla, 5,000 is they'll do it, and maybe they'll learn, but they're ready to do it.
But they don't. But they could make, Herbert. They could make 500. Task them, and maybe they have made 500. Task them, find out that they want to tweak some actuator, change the way something works, and then they go and make the next, 1,000 after that. And I mean, at some point, they might even change a larger scale of the hardware.
So you don't think that that's why they already have Optimus version 3? And they had Optimus 1, they had Optimus 2, now they have Optimus 3, and then Elon comes out and says, we're going to make 5,000 this year. You think that maybe Optimus 3, and of course, these bots will continue to always be iterated on. But I'm just saying, do they already have the version of the hardware that they need that he can confidently say, I'm going to make 5,000 of them now? Or are you saying, well, we'll take Optimus 3, we'll make 500, and then we'll see 1,000 of them, then we'll keep moving forward, only if maybe there's Optimus 4. You know what I mean?
Well, I think he can make his 5,000 if he wants to. I think it's just really a decision that they get to make. I mean, it's, as far as I know, the 5,000 are not meant to necessarily seed companies outside Tesla.
Right. Agreed.
And if that's the case, then he doesn't have to ramp. I mean, that ramp is really about, can he show a ramp in manufacturing at some point, right? Obviously, that's where this is going to be the linchpin of the whole thing. But I mean, at the beginning, he's got to get heavy validation units purposed, and he's got to get some time behind his belt to have those things operating in these factories, doing these tasks and seeing what are the weak spots on the bot, and so forth. So I think, I guess the good news is, I guess he gets to decide. I don't think producing 5,000 is hard. I think it's just whether he wants to produce the 5,000 based on the current platform. Yeah.
And I think to Phil's point, when you think about it, a humanoid bot is not a car. A humanoid bot is about 3% or so the weight of a Model 3.
Right.
Let's say, in theory, over time, you can produce 20 bots for every car. 5,000 bots is only like 250 or less cars. It shouldn't be difficult for a manufacturing company like Tesla to produce 250 new cars if they wanted to, right, on a new production line. So I don't think that's the issue. I think the bigger thing is, how many bots do they need? And perhaps we can approach the question maybe more from a training angle. Will it be helpful for them in their efforts to train Optimus to have a legion of bots, 5,000 bots at their disposal? And I guess the question that's for you, Phil, in terms of, how do you see the training of Optimus go?
Yeah, it's a great question I've been thinking a lot about, because I like to draw parallels from the work that they've done in AI on FSD, but then there's a whole new thing here and it's probably leaning more towards reinforced learning, where they're basically, copying skill, training with a human and copying the skill directly from the human. So again, I mean, without being there on the inside, I'd say that the software, the training, that's the hard stuff for me. I mean, I think that's the hard stuff. I don't mean that the building the bots and creating great durability and creating all these degrees, that stuff's really hard. The software to me is much harder. And the reason I say that is because if you looked at the trajectory for the longest time, like Boston Dynamics has been in this game for forever. They've been sort of this science project company that's been doing things. And I know they didn't start with a bunch of electric actuators, they start with a lot of different types of things. But I mean, it's only recently that we've got to the level of software in terms of AI systems to build these things that they can be very general purpose, right? And the key is general purpose. This is what we're trying to do here. If the purpose was to train the bot in this very specific role, then what we would have is a special purpose bot, which we have running in factories all over the place today. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a bot that's extremely general purpose that ultimately works like CP30. And so that software stuff is I think the key to on what they do here. So I think when they put these bots to work in the Tesla factories, I think they're not just looking at what they did from a hardware perspective. They're trying to figure out how do we make this training process easier and more general purpose at each step. Eventually, I think that's the hard part.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that they're going to go ahead and make the 5,000 this year, regardless of the hardware challenges, because they're going to learn, and it's going to be costly, but it's something that they will learn from. So they're willing to do that.
Yeah, I mean,
So
it's
then,
a bit of a rounding error too, though. It is costly,
yeah,
but I mean, it's no
yeah,
big. And by the way, building them is part of the experience of learning how to
that's
build
what I'm
them,
saying.
right?
Yeah, because they've never built these before. So part of it is let's start building lines and be
Right.
ready to completely wipe them out if they didn't work. But let's get
Exactly.
going with some sort of
Exactly.
test.
Exactly.
So then with the training, if you have, and then I've asked you this before, Phil, Cern, if you have 5,000 bots at a Tesla factory, what are their jobs? Can you fill enough pick and place? Now, once you get to 10,000 bots, what are their jobs? What's the next job that you can easily train, or the next job that you could train without getting to general purpose? And then afterwards, they start selling it to customers. Now, you could argue that all of this is just pick and place. And if it's just pick and place, there's enough for 10,000. You tell me if that's the case for the factories at Tesla. Then the reason why they're selling it next year is that because it's still just pick and place. So anything they make, they can't use it anymore. They start selling it to other customers. Do you think that that's what's going to happen? Or do you think that there's another skill set that just opens up the capabilities and the role?
Yeah, for me, I would approach it in the following way. It's not so much what can these bots do, and it's an open question about whether or not Tesla could absorb 5,000 bots in the next year, right? What would these bots do given their capabilities? To me, though, it's about training. And so it seems clear that having a fleet of bots, depending on how you're going to train them, and of course, there's multiple ways of training these bots, right? And Phil can speak to this more deeply than I can, but that's the purpose of building a fleet of bots, is for training purposes, not because Tesla wants or needs the labor, right? And maybe you can say, well, they're kind of one and the same. Well, yes, they are, but I think the more important part of it is the training side of things, right? You need a fleet of bots out there doing the work, training, and on all kinds of different scenarios, making mistakes, learning, and you need to try to do that at scale. Is 5,000 scale? No, but it's a good start.
Yeah, I agree. Training is the hard part. And that's how ready are they from a software systems perspective to absorb and scale the training side. And that's an important consideration. Like, we see them doing this mimicking of humans today, and that's not super scalable per se. And they need to get that into a place where it is scalable so that they can then have a more generic approach to skill training, versus just the pick and place type of stuff. And I think this is the year of learning for Tesla. That's what I keep coming back to. It's like, learn how to build them, build the best. I think they've spent a lot of time trying to build the best physical product, and Now they need to see what does the durability of that product look like when they put them to work. How can they train them? How can they train them at scale? How do they build them? Learn how to build them, and then I think they can ramp very quickly from there. So
No, I mean, a couple points against that is one is Elon himself said that these bots, the 5,000, will be doing useful work,
yeah,
not just training. So that's and then he also said, right? Then he say that as we scale up, we got to 50,000 next year. There's that race between can I get them to have enough skills to be able to, there's that balance between hardware versus skills. And then I was talking to Chris Camillo, and his opinion after interviewing a bunch of human bot company vendors. He says that he doesn't think that you need to have 5,000, 10,000 bots. That's not necessarily an advantage for training, because you can now use these simulations that will take you almost all there, and maybe just 500 bots, 1,000 bots may be enough. Like more, it's a diminishing return, not like what I had assumed based on what Elon was saying that 5,000, it's just like the cars. The millions of cars gets you millions of miles, and you need all of that to train to get
I
the
see.
edge
I see.
data.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I
then
don't
in a
think
bot,
right.
right? Do you need having 10,000 bots versus like another company only has 500 bots? Is that a massive advantage because of all the video data that they're capturing from all the different tasks, and then they're able to do that versus just using simulation to get you 99% of the way
Yeah,
there? I don't know. Yeah.
I would lean more towards Chris's comment towards that. I mean, to me, if you gave me 500, I don't think I could use 5,000. I think I could use 500. Imagine I was the one trying to absorb them in the factory, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do here? Well, I'm going to be deeply connected to the software team, the AI team, and we're going to be figuring out how we can take this training, and they'll be able to replicate the training across the bots, and very quickly figure out how to sort of like a software update, over the air update to the bot. But I don't think gathering real world data is the first order bit here. I mean, it's really about getting the training system operating properly, and that's the thing that I think holds back on the scale equation. Not necessarily. I mean, building them may be very hard, but certainly I don't think you could. I mean, I wouldn't. You can put you could take 5,000. You could probably say, okay, we've built 5 skills. We can put them to use in the factory. I mean, if you look at the factory shift change and figure out how many people walked out of there, and you said, okay, what are these people doing, and what type of tasks can we just replace them? Lower level skills with the bots. I think that's what they're going to chip away at over this first period. But I think this first period, this whole year, is a big test.
And I think Elon did talk about employees taking the bots home with them too, right?
Again,
That'd be
when he
cool.
says something like that, he
Yeah.
didn't give a date, and I'm thinking
Yeah.
5 years from now. That's not something that's going to happen this year. I mean,
The more they lean in on scaling the training processes and getting that starting to flow,
Yeah.
then I think that they can ramp much quicker. I mean, here you have, yeah, this is a picture of them manufacturing, and they're doing it's very hand manufacturing process right now, right?
yeah,
I
manual.
mean, they're
Yeah.
learning how to build these things, and then to Elon's point, you don't start automating this
Yeah.
until you figure out what you actually have to do, and then you try to delete some things from the. I mean, we know his 5-step process. He's
Yes.
not going to start by just building an automated system to build these things. I mean, he got there with Cybercab because guess what? He's gone through that process with all these other vehicles, but he didn't start there with these guys. He's like, well, how do we build these things? What's really happening when we build these things?
Mhm.
Um, and I think part of that will be how they do the training side.
I mean, this, Optimus at home and humanoid robots at home, I'm very, very, very skeptical of that. It's too early. There might be some
Yeah,
roles that can be done. It can
yeah. I
be
don't.
certainly testing for sure, but not this. It's ready and we're going to sell it, and
No,
all the employees will get their, they get to beta test it first and sign up for it now. And no, that's
these
just
will be held mostly in the factories for the next foreseeable period of time. Doesn't mean a few don't make their way home, to certain things. I mean, some of the software guys will take them home, um, but
Yeah.
but it's not. That Tesla doesn't need to touch the consumer market for quite some time, really, to be successful with the product. It's good to talk about the consumer market because it really builds a handle for people. People understand it really well. They can understand CP30. It's sort of this big divide, right? People that think factory, they think about these very specialized robots in factories, and that's a box checked. They don't understand the humanoid application there. But then they've never really watched a shift change, apparently, because
Yeah.
right. And then they can see the connect to the home market easily. Like, oh, I could cook my food and clean my house and take care of grandma, and that makes sense. But Tesla's not going to start there.
Beta testing for sure. I
Yeah.
have hands up, please. I'd love to beta test that now.
Yeah.
I'll beta test it for a
testing
year.
sure.
You can maybe have 1,000 beta testers, but I'm just saying it's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to actually buy one. Or we're going to actually have a useful work at home. I don't think that that's happening in the next 3 years.
There's two good reasons why the bots stay in the factory for a while. One is safety. Factories are much more controlled. At home, it's chaotic, right? Cats and dogs and kids running around. So ultimately, good for training, but not initially. And then the second one, which is most important, is economics. The value to having bots in a factory is absolutely enormous, way more than what most people would want to pay for a robot in their house. Sure,
Especially
there might
if
be
it's not yet general purpose. Yeah,
that's right.
Like if you can't do laundry yet, or if you can't iron my clothes yet, what am I paying for?
Now, here's something I kind of want to ask you guys. Jensen Huang the other day said that we will have digital twins of all factories. We will have digital twins of every automobile, and we'll have digital twins of people. Could the digital twin that he's talking about be a humanoid robot for a person?
So explain that a little bit more.
Well,
what's a digital twin of me?
When he said, well, okay, so you think about a digital twin of a factory, right? You can change things virtually to see what the impact would be on the factory floor. If you moved around equipment and changed the production line, you could do it virtually before you actually do it on the factory floor.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I understand the rationale for that, right? That's a lot easier to do it virtually first. And Jensen talks about when they come up with a new chip, they know it's going to work because they have a digital twin of the chip and they've tested it on everything.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay?
I get that.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
For an automobile, a digital twin of a car, that kind of makes sense too, in the sense of you can kind of maybe keep a track of how things are going and the wear pattern on tires or parts of the car, and you could kind of get maybe some heads up about what's happening to the real vehicle if you have a digital twin of it, and you can play out some scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I kind of understand that too. But then now he's also talking about having digital twins of humans. So is that from a health perspective that we're able to play scenarios forward for a human if you have a digital twin? Or is it more from the physical standpoint if you have a humanoid robot? I don't know. That's an open question for me. I haven't connected the dots there yet. I'm hoping you guys can for me.
As I understand the term with respect to factories, it's about virtualization, mostly about saying, okay, I have 5,000 pipes moving chemicals through the factories, and valves get stuck, or valves have to be cleaned, and I can run that in simulation as like a twin replica of that in a virtual space to see what the failures are and what the failure rates are. And I think, and I didn't listen to Jensen's comments, but I think maybe in the human space is that if you're tasking them, potentially, think about putting the bots to work in dangerous environments and trying to understand how environmentals affect them. Maybe that is a good way to stick them there first. I arguably would say is that there's such a incredible physical quality to the humanoid bot that I think that's almost sort of like enhancing your labor force, where I think you really find it to be replacing your labor force. I mean, I don't think you need to really twin that out so much.
I just asked Grok, and Grok said a digital twin of your brain, a fully accurate functional replica of your neural processes currently beyond our tech capabilities, of course, but maybe you can brain map, model it, right? You have every single neurons. Maybe there's a digital twin of your behavior, your consciousness,
Yeah.
or your the way you behave, and could guess on that. But I just
Yeah, I think you need more physical to do that, because like I would, Cern, you mentioned health, and I was thinking, yeah, that kind of makes some sense, but you need so much more stuff there, and
Mhm.
I think you probably end up seeing that just running in the cloud and not
Yeah.
in a physical manifestation, unless it relates to things that are quite directly impact, like environmentals, where you're actually saying, okay, I'm going to put the bot in this situation in the factory. And I'm building this highly automated line where a human is slotted in here, here, and here. Is it safe to do so? So now you have this physical bot that could be there and doing some of the tasking, and then you say, okay, yeah, you can run a human in that space as well and not violate OSHA or kill the human. But I think you'd probably just leave the bot in place, call it a day.
Yeah, it was the first time that I've heard Jensen talk about digital twins for humans. He's talked about it for factories before. And so I'm curious as to see how that develops. Usually when Jensen talks about something, it's not just something he's come up with out of the blue. There's something behind that.
Right, right.
And so I'm intrigued to hear more from him about
mhm.
it.
I mean, it's just I don't. It's kind of silly to say it directly, but it's like, how do you apply more compute to problems? He's selling compute, and
Yeah.
anything that when you think of these virtual simulations, that they're very deep in terms of compute, right? To do to kind of simulate a digital twin of a factory is a completely is a huge consumption of compute. So it makes sense that it's like a new market.
That's right.
You know,
Okay, well, to go back to Tesla, do you actually think you do need a supercomputer, and you need these neural net AIs to be able to create a human or robot? And if that's the case, can NVIDIA? Many people think, oh, NVIDIA's got it. They're the ones that's going to supply it for these 11 bots. You see those 11 bots that was on stage with him?
Mhm.
They have partnered with NVIDIA, and they say, that's where I'm going to get. When I see that, I hear basically that NVIDIA is going to sell them the chip, the GPUs, they're going to sell them the servers, they're going to sell them the simulation software. Um, but that's what that is. It doesn't, you still
Right.
need to be the one to create the neural nets, right? And so, Phil, you know a lot more about this. What's
I
your
think
reaction when you hear about that
to me, I
NVIDIA
can.
partnership?
If we just bring it back to FSD, it's easier to think of it this way because we have something, and as you and I were talking just yesterday, Herbert. There is a special thing that the architecture of what Tesla's done in terms of its AI for full self driving is unique and new and different. It's not you can't just go buy it somewhere and say, okay, I can do this. And so what people tend to think often in the space is like, okay, I all I need is an inference chip and this thing called a neural network. But it's like, well, how do you architect that neural network? What are the inputs? What are the outputs? What are the subcomponents of it? Um, it's That's where all of the skill is being manifest from the AI team at, say, Tesla. So I think that, to your point, Herbert, what NVIDIA is largely doing is selling the hardware, and unless they're going all the way to the far right here and produced essentially a whole system, AI system, uh, that can skill train, and then they're just saying, okay, now we just replicated it in a bot. I think that's a bit of a reach, So what's probably happening is they're really selling chips at the end of the day, and they're selling some software systems and some management systems on top. Um, but they're not. I mean, the full AI is something that has to be developed. Like, I think, Tesla's not Tesla. If you look at a project and it goes through, Tesla has for years been researching how to do this with Optimus. Same thing with self-driving, right? They've tried different models. They've thrown out the algorithmic side of the planning piece, and they've really determined a place that they want to be, and they've built a team around that that's that thing. So I think it's hard just to say. I mean, it's what I would say if I was NVIDIA. But the truth is, from a software perspective, which is really where I come from, there's a huge gap here. Give me a chip and show me a car, and I have to do something in the middle. And that piece in the middle is years of effort, hundreds of people, the right hiring. There's a lot there.
How much of an advantage do you think that Tesla's work on FSD gives them on the humanoid side in terms of understanding physics?
Uh, Probably a great deal, but I can't be certain. I think that the thing where I would probably lean in on that is how much effort they put in the driving simulator system that they built, which is it's a physics engine.
Mhm.
It's trying to determine these objects in space um, and be able to simulate these things in a very real world way. So I think they've got behind them a lot of skill there. And I just what I'm missing in my brain at the moment is what is transferable in terms of how are they actually training these bots? What are they actually doing to train these bots? And I don't yet have a sense of what's going on there.
Yeah, because that seems like that's one of the key challenges for humanoid bots is really understanding physics in the physical world.
Yeah,
And
I
certainly
mean,
cars have an element of that, right? Because you have to understand trajectory and,
yeah,
stopping time and all that kind of stuff, right? There's a physics element to it. So it
but
seems to me that a good deal of it should be transferable at some kind of base level.
yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing about the car though is at the end of the day, the outputs are very simple. They're
Yeah.
just accelerator, brake, steering
Mhm.
angle. And here we have a bot that has so many different places where there is motion.
Yep.
So, but the representation of a dynamic environment, I think, is very transferable. Meaning, the stuff that they've done in the simulator in terms of, remember what's happening here is that the bot, beyond its own space, is interacting with the free world. Um, so then that's all it's physics. So I'm sure that's what they've done. I'm sure they've taken that whole simulation platform and worked from there. The question that I have in my brain is how much of the entire FSD project has informed this. And when I say informed, I don't just mean transferred forward and is the Optimus platform. I mean, as the team has learned, they also learned, importantly, what to throw out, like what not to bring forward.
Mhm.
Um, and that's something that most people never ever think of. It's like a very, very skilled team realizes what to delete. I mean, to be fair. So the if you built this entire team, I'm sure that the AI team for vehicle and bot are very much the same team. Not exactly the same team, not necessarily the same person managing every aspect of it, but they have taken the root of what they've done in terms of a skill set of AI and the techniques and the things that they've developed. They brought it over to Optimus to see what they could replicate. And I'm sure there's a fork in the road there to a certain extent. It may not be dramatic, but they brought this learning thing forward. And I think that's the core of it to me. It's not,
Mhm.
the specifics. It's this learned system, um, and that's all in people's brains, right? It's the people you hired to do these tasks.
Let me ask you guys three questions and both of you answer them. Okay. So, first question is by the end of this year, how likely is it, or do you believe, are you expecting that Tesla will have 5,000 bots, or do you think it's going to be less? The second question is will these bots be able to do just one task or two tasks or three tasks, right? Multiple tasks. And then the third would be do you think that they'll show it? Will we see 5,000 bots doing two tasks or three tasks all happening right now, or we're going to just see like, demo here and a demo there by the end of this year?
Yes, multiple, and yes.
So you're saying 5,000 bots. You do think there's going to be more than just one task, and you think that they're going to be this visual of a factory with many bots working.
Elon wants to show his legion of robots.
His legion, right?
But you believe that they're ready, multiple tasks, not just one task. Okay, and then Phil, what do you think?
I'd say they would build up to 5,000 bots. I mean, I think what I'm saying is they're controlling that. They'll decide.
Yeah.
If the hardware is ready enough, they'll keep making more. If they want to tweak it, they'll stop and they'll do another, tweak or another rev, a Gen X of the thing. But I think that is sort of pinned by the idea that yes, Elon wants a lot of them to show off. So so it's sort of a Goldilocks in there somewhere. And in terms of skills, I think yes, easily that they can show off 10 to 15 different skills in the factory easily. Those are all like what I say. Those will all be like single skill type of things, not like this multiplied effect of very complex skills. But they'll probably have, they'll show off 10 to 15 different tasks in the factory.
Wonderful. Great conversation, guys. We started off with the market size, with Morgan Stanley being way too low. Then we went and broke it down in process, exactly what we think is going to happen next 6 months and a year from now, and the challenges for training and the challenges for the hardware. Thank you both. These are the two folks you need to be following if you care about the humanoid bot industry. You got Cern Basher. He's famous for creating that table that follows the top bot makers and where they are in terms of their milestones. And you got Phil Bissell, who's really breaking down for you how does FSD work? How does AI work specifically for Tesla's use cases? Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye all.
Thanks, Herbert.
I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.